Yup, we're doing it. We're breaking down the entire series of The Wire, considered by many to be the greatest TV show of all time, and at the very least top 5. This will be a legendary journey, and goddammit are we excited to do this. Damon, talk to me.
For years, people told me to watch The Wire, and for years, I ignored them.
Nah, I don't really feel like it.
It's time to admit I was a damn fool, but I'm here to make amends. This is a crime classic on the tier of The Sopranos, True Detective Season 1, Fargo, Law & Order, you name it. The show's body of work is masterful. It's subverted the typical police procedural, and for lack of a better phrase, the show makes you take a good hard look at the real world, its systemic issues, and the characters on the chessboard throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, I feel pretty guilty, Damon, for being late to this show as well, but fuck it. At least I got to it. So let's open up with our episode breakdown. The first scene of the entire series begins with a crime scene in Baltimore at night. A young man named Snot has been shot, and the police are on the scene. A Baltimore detective named Jimmy McNulty is asking one of Snot's friends what the hell happened. Also, what kind of nickname is Snot? The man won't snitch on the killer, but he tells us enough. Every Friday night, him and the boys would shoot dice in the alley, and Snot would be involved too. Whenever the cash in the pot got high enough, Snot would swoop in, take the money, and run. When this happened, they would chase Snot down and beat him up, but that's it. Nobody would ever kill him. Until now. McNulty is confused. If you know Snot is gonna rob the game, why even let him play? The young man shakes his head and says, "This is America," and boom, we cut to the opening credits.
From my point of view, the difference in perspectives between law enforcement institutions and the streets is what makes The Wire The Wire. David Simon drops us into early 2000s Baltimore just after the events of September 11th reverberate, and crime on the streets, namely drug rings and homicides, are rampant. Simon actually worked for the Baltimore Sun, which explains how he had so much insight into this time period. Much of what's happening on the street level is cyclical, and that goes for the justice system as well. McNulty cannot grasp why they would let Snot run it back so many times, and the dude he's talking with isn't going to stand for the idea of going to court, because that's not going to bring any kind of real solution. The guy talking with McNulty spells out a central message of the show: everybody has a right to play the game, and there are a few rules to follow. But after that, anything goes as far as how it sorts itself out. The game is the game, and always will be.
So after the opening scene, we then get to experience the whole "When You Walk Through the Garden" intro song that's going to be a huge part of this series. After that, we then jump to the courthouse where McNulty is walking with his partner, Detective Bunk Moreland. Bunk is amused while McNulty fills him in on the murder of Snot. Apparently, the young man did end up telling McNulty who the murderer was, and all it took was a few Newports. McNulty isn't here in the courthouse to work his own case. He's merely here to drop in on another case that he seems very interested in. This case involves a young man named D'Angelo Barksdale who is being tried for murder. 2 witnesses get called up to the stand. The first witness is a man named William Gant, and when asked if he recognizes D'Angelo as the shooter, he says yes. Gant is then excused, and the second witness, Nikisha Lyles, is called on the stand. We learn a few more details about the case. Nikisha works as a security guard at the building where the murder took place. D'Angelo allegedly got into a fight with the man, got knocked to the ground, and then pulled out a pistol and shot and killed the guy. When the prosecutor asks Lyles if she recognizes D'Angelo as the shooter, she surprisingly says no. This is a shock to the prosecutor since they had already gotten a signature from Lyles confirming that she recognized D'Angelo as the shooter. Lyles starts making a bunch of excuses. "Oh, I made a mistake. The shooter looked like D'Angelo but isn't actually him. I saw the actual shooter walk into the building a week later, blah blah." Either way, it's a huge blow to the prosecution's case, and you can see the look of defeat on the prosecutor's face. Having only one of 2 witnesses isn't going to be enough. While all this is going on, there's a man with glasses in a suit watching. He looks very menacing, and in between giving cold stare downs to the witnesses, he also manages to draw a nice picture, which he shows McNulty. Pretty damn good drawing. There are also some men walking in during the case, all who sit near the man and also give scary looks to the witnesses. Once Nikisha claims that she doesn't recognize D'Angelo, McNulty knows that the case is basically over, so he walks down the hall and finds another detective named Barlow. He tells Barlow that one of his witnesses have been tampered with and he's gonna lose this case. Barlow doesn't believe him.
And McNulty just isn't wired the same as the Barlow types. The bullshit complacency doesn't fit with the guy who's showing up in his spare time to sit in on other trials. During the case itself, we see another way the system is broken based on how easy it is to flip Nikisha. We don't know the full deal yet, but we can assume that whatever the dude with the drawing pad had over her was greater than any benefit the state could provide. Basically, what incentive is there to snitch in this situation? You're opening yourself up to vulnerability, and the system hasn't really given a shit about you to begin with. If D'Angelo is just part of a bigger organization, taking him down doesn't even guarantee progress for the greater good. Why put yourself and your family at risk?
We then get introduced to another division within Baltimore PD, the Narcotics Division. A female detective named Kima Greggs is leading a little operation to arrest a few dealers. The rest of Kima's crew includes detectives Ellis Carver and Thomas Houck, aka Herc. Herc and Carver are both immature idiots at this point, and Kima is clearly the sharpest one. Hence why, even though they're all detectives in the same rank, Kima seems to be the leader amongst the three. They conduct a typical drug bust, but during the bust, Herc and Carver don't search the car properly and miss two guns hidden in the back seat. Fortunately, Kima is much more thorough and she finds it.
Some characters are meant to pass on some degree of intelligence to us. Herc and Carver are not those guys.
His does too, think about it. Shit rolls, piss trickles. Downhill though.
They ground us in the experience of two cops who think they're hot shit, but actually have a very limited understanding of how the streets operate. Herc in particular is basically a caricature of a bad cop.
Whoa, that was close.
We then cut back to the courtroom as the verdict is given, not guilty. The crew of guys celebrate as Barlow is pissed off and McNulty has a disappointed but not shocked face. The judge presiding over the case is named Judge Phelan, and he looks pissed off as he thanks the jury and dismisses the court.
Again, Barlow comes off like a fatalistic tool.
Yeah, Barlow is just your classic guy that just clocks in and clocks out. It doesn't seem like he's a detective that really wants to do a lot of extra work.
Think I give a fuck? I'll be chalking you off one night.
Anyways, let's talk about what really kicks off this entire show, the case involving the Barksdale crew. So Judge Phelan, the one presiding over the D'Angelo case, watches his prosecutor lose and it pisses him off. So he and McNulty somehow know each other from before and seem to have an okay relationship. So he calls McNulty in and is like, what the fuck is going on? When he finds out that McNulty wasn't even the one working this D'Angelo Barksdale murder case, he's even more confused. Why the hell were you there, McNulty? McNulty is more than willing to spill the beans. He tells Judge Phelan everything. The defendant, D'Angelo Barksdale, is the nephew of Avon Barksdale. Avon Barksdale and Stringer Bell run the Barksdale Crew, a drug gang that's been gaining serious power in the streets of West Baltimore. Stringer was the tall, menacing dude in the suit. They now control the Franklin Terrace Projects, which is composed of 7 high-rise buildings and surrounding low-rises. The Barksdale Crew controls 5 out of 7 towers, so they are distributing a shit ton of drugs inside those towers. In the last year, they've killed about 10 to 12 people. They've beaten 3 of those murders in court. It's not even a secret. Everyone knows that the Barksdale Crew controls West Baltimore. This pisses Phelan off even more, so he asks who in Baltimore PD is working on this. So with the shit-eating grin, McNulty tells Phelan the truth. Nobody in the department has looked deeper into the Barksdale situation. And this, ladies and gentlemen, kicks off an entire shitstorm. So Judge Phelan brings up the issue with Baltimore police, and now the pressure is on since you don't want to piss off a judge. Also, Phelan has a ton of political connections, so having him as an enemy could destroy your career. Shit begins to roll downhill. The deputy ops of the Baltimore Police Department gets yelled at by Phelan. His name is Burrell, so he ends up calling the heads of both the Narcotics and Homicide Divisions into his office and tells them to handle this Barksdale situation. Major Forrester, who runs the Narcotics Division, then calls his Lieutenant Cedric Daniels into his office and tells him to gather everything he knows about Avon Barksdale and his crew by tomorrow. Nobody is happy. As mentioned earlier, shit rolls downhill. So Daniels then calls over his best detective, Kima, and tells her to look into Barksdale, use their connections at the DEA for any additional help.
Kima's tired reaction to the Barksdale initiative hints that she's seen some stuff like this before. Department hypes up a big name to bust, only to repeat the cycle all over again in a few months. The strategy that she's running on the street with Herc and Carver is basically whack-a-mole. Some street rips here, a low-level bust there, and these two knuckleheads get to maintain a sense of upholding justice. The common theme here is that it's not going to bring any real solutions.
Fighting the war on drugs, one brutality case at a time.
So let's jump over to the Homicide Division to see how this ends up fucking them over. The Homicide Division is judged on their clearance rate, which is basically how many murders they get versus how many murders they solve. So while conventional wisdom suggests that this department would solve murders, the truth is they only want to solve the easy murders. The department is reluctant to take on new murder cases since they may go unsolved and fuck up their clearance rate. Both McNulty and Bunk are detectives in the Homicide Division. Also, it's hinted that Homicide is slightly more prestigious than Narcotics. Homicide seems to be divided into mini units, and the unit that McNulty and Bunk are on report to Sergeant J. Landsman. Landsman reports to Major Rawls, who runs all of Homicide. Rawls calls McNulty into his office and calls him a backstabbing piece of shit for telling everything to Judge Phelan. Now here's the thing. McNulty definitely knew what he was doing when he told that shit to the judge, but McNulty is genuinely trying to do his job. He wants to get the Barksdale gang off the street, which is what a good homicide cop would do. But it goes against how the unit actually functions, and McNulty has now put a massive target on Rawls' back, and he will now take his anger out on McNulty. He tells McNulty that he needs to report on everything he knows about Barksdale, the 10 alleged murders, the 3 that were tried in court, and everything else that he knows by 8 a.m. tomorrow. Both Kima and McNulty are in for late nights.
Chen's spot on. What's good for the institution isn't actually contributing to the greater good. There's no real lasting justice on this path. McNulty simply gives too much of a shit to fit into this puzzle of complacency, and that comes at a personal cost. Is he a bit of a self-absorbed prick? Sure, but he's got heart.
So if it's not your case, why do you care?
Well, who said I did?
Landsman is a grade A troll during the series. He's good comic relief, a good foil to McNulty. He brings an energy that's somewhere between Kevin's older brother Buzz in Home Alone and Ham from The Sandlot. His character's actually based on a real-life Baltimore cop with the same name.
Eventually, a joint task force is formed between Narcotics and Homicide. The task force will be led by Lieutenant Daniels, who has been given instructions by Burrell to keep this investigation simple. No wiretaps, no long surveillance, nothing that is going to take a long time or be too expensive. Burrell wants this investigation to end quickly, give Judge Phelan some results so he can be satisfied. Daniels understands and sets up the force. His lead detective is Kima, they also have a state's attorney involved, and McNulty is predictably sent over by Rawls from Homicide. On a side note, this kind of fucks Bunk over since he now has to do all of the work that he and McNulty would have previously split. By trying to be a good cop, McNulty has only given everyone in Homicide more work. The Barksdale task force then meets and Daniels gives orders to do basic street rips, arrest drug dealers and put some guys behind bars. McNulty disagrees and says busting low-level dealers won't get them closer to Avon or Stringer. The Barksdale crew is far too organized to be taken down by that type of shit. They need to be doing real police work, surveillance, wires, asset investigation. Daniels disagrees and shit, so does most of the task force. None of them take Barksdale seriously, and most of them don't really care, and Daniel still has his marching orders to get this shit over with in a month. He tells McNulty to go through old murder files and see if they can reopen a case. McNulty's attempt to do real police work is shut down, and everyone is pissed at him per usual. But McNulty isn't giving up this easily. In a drunken conversation with Bunk by the train tracks at 3:30 in the morning, he decides that he's gonna do this case properly. Fuck what the higher-ups have to say. Now, we've spent most of this video focusing on the unit investigating the Barksdale gang, but let's spend a little bit of time focusing on what's going on with the Barksdale crew itself. After beating the case, D'Angelo gets driven back home by his cousin Weebay, who is also a high-ranking member of the Barksdale crew. D is excited about being free, and he's giving them props for tampering with the witness. Weebay pulls over and angrily reminds D of the rule: don't talk in cars, don't talk in places they don't own, and don't talk to random people. The Barksdale crew owns a strip club, which they also use as an HQ. We get our first look at the leader of the crew, Avon Barksdale. So Avon is the number 1 and Stringer is his number 2. Weebay brings D to the strip club, and D gets congratulated on beating the case, but then he's reprimanded by his uncle Avon for getting himself into such a dumb situation. D had plenty of Barksdale soldiers around him, and he had a gun. How did he possibly get himself beaten up? And even if he lost the fight, just take the damn beating. There was no need to pull out a gun and shoot the guy and cause a shitstorm. But since D is family, Avon always has a soft spot for him, so he gives him a hug and says, let's move on. But doing something that dumb still means consequences, and D gets himself temporarily demoted. When he shows up at one of the towers, Stringer Bell tells him he's working the low rises, aka the pit, for now. The towers have way more foot traffic, which means way more sales. Prior to the arrest, D was running one of the towers, which means he was doing pretty well for himself. The low rises are slow and the money isn't as good. Stringer tells D that if he handles the low rises well, then maybe he'll get a tower again.
To me, D is a likable character. There's this reason he's the entry point we as the viewers see into the Barksdale crew. Decent sense of humor, a nice guy, However, this makes him stick out like a sore thumb amongst the squad. He moves like a middle manager born into a drug dynasty. There's a lack of instinct, and we see this in the car with Weebay, also with Avon when he really thinks Avon wants to hear about his prison experience.
You know, jail ain't no joke. I don't know shit about jail. I don't plan on knowing shit about jail, you feel me?
A guy like Avon, who's evaded the system for a while, sees that kind of talk as something a loser would do, for lack of a better term, and a bad omen from a superstitious angle. He's kind to D in the end because that's his little cousin, but this is a man on guard, especially given the attention the crew is drawing in court.
So this then brings us to the low-rise crew. D pulls up to find 3 teenagers working as the grunts of the low-rises: Bodie, Wallace, and Pooh. It's not a tight operation, especially since young Wallace isn't very careful. In one example, he gets scammed out of $30 by a junkie using fake money. We'll talk about these junkies later in the video, don't worry. D takes over the operation right away and makes some immediate changes to improve it. Out of the 3 teens, Bodie seems to be the leader and the most confident. Pooh is pretty chill. Meanwhile, Wallace seems like the youngest and most innocent, although Wallace is definitely smart. For example, while getting scolded by D, he correctly points out that Alexander Hamilton, who was on the $10 bill, wasn't actually a president. During this episode, we see D start to undergo some personal growth. When they catch Johnny, one of the junkies who scammed them with fake money, Bodie suggests that they throw him off the freeway bridge.
This motherfucker burned us for $30. We need to take him to Franklin Ave and throw his ass right onto the motherfucking expressway.
All Johnny has is $10 on him, so even after taking that off of him, he'd still be $20 short. D just takes the 10 and walks away, sparing Johnny's life, but not sparing him a brutal beating, which Bodie and the rest of the crew administer. We will discuss later why this beating becomes very important.
D gets this little look in his eye that suggests he's not just interested in causing pain for pain's sake. It's easy to feel bad given who Johnny is. These young guys down in the pit haven't seen as much as D has. Bodie and Wallace are still misguided and operate by the rules of the wild out here. You can't let somebody scam you without a cost. They need to get their numbers up to even have a chance at the opportunities D has had given to him. It almost feels like D is losing a little steam compared to the energy he had after the innocent verdict went down.
Later on, D is in the strip club talking to Stringer about the whole fake money incident. Stringer seems to agree with beating up Johnny for the fake money since it's all about the message that they're sending. Meanwhile, D just doesn't understand why they need to be that brutal over 10, 20 bucks here and there. Stringer walks away, and then one of the strippers comes up to D and asks him to buy her a drink. D is still in a bad mood from his convo with String, so he declines. Okay, so we've covered the main storyline in this episode, but let's talk about some of the characters, the relationships, and maybe some side plots that happen as well. Let's start off with our junkie duo, Bubbles and Johnny. They spend all day figuring out a way to get money to use on drugs. This involves either scamming or stealing or finding scrap metal to sell. Bubbles is much older, so he's kind of a mentor to Johnny. Bubbles is the one who comes up with the fake money scam that they use on the Barksdale pit crew. Johnny is young and eager, so he volunteers to do the next fake cash scam. We know how this goes. Johnny is sloppy and he gets caught and he's brutally beaten up by the Barksdale crew, landing him in critical condition at the hospital. This beating pisses Bubbles off. You nearly kill a kid over $20? So this prompts Bubbles to reach out to Kima and offer his help in the Barksdale investigation. FYI, Bubbles and Kima have a relationship from before where Bubbles fed Kima information.
Bubbles is another very likable character. His presence in the episode is depressing at times, but it's also raw. He's held on to what makes him human despite what life has tossed at him and his own mistakes along the way. Both he and Johnny give us an angle into the street hierarchy from the very bottom.
Now let's talk a little bit about Bunk and McNulty, who do have such a funny and awesome relationship. Not only are they partners, but they are also genuinely homies. They talk a ton of shit to each other, but they also have each other's backs.
How is it you always got the whole world pissed off at you?
They also both love to get fucked up. There's this scene where they grab after work drinks at a bar, but then soon enough they end up getting shit-faced drinking whiskey straight from the bottle at the train tracks.
I love that scene. Most of the show is through the lens of an ensemble cast. These two are the core dynamic duo on the detective side to start out. Think Rust and Marty, Hayes and Roland, Starsky and Hutch, Mulder and Scully, minus the sexual tension on that last one though.
McNulty also has a friend in the FBI, a field agent named Agent Terrance Fitzhugh. I'm just gonna call him Fitz because I think I'm fucking up the pronunciation of his last name. Now, I don't know much about Fed hierarchy, but my guess is that the FBI is much more prestigious than Baltimore City PD. McNulty seems to have helped out Fitzy with the case, so Fitzy has respect for McNulty. McNulty pays a visit to Fitz at the FBI field office in Baltimore, and the stark contrast between the resources of the FBI versus Baltimore PD is displayed. Fitz is in the middle of working a drug case, and his team is live streaming hidden camera surveillance footage of a drug den. The audio is crisp, the visuals are clear, the technology is awesome. Fitz does tell McNulty that the war on drugs is becoming old news in the FBI. Terrorism is the new focus, so all of this drug funding will soon be directed to the war on terror.
There was a time in America where the focus was not crime in the city. It was terrorism, terrorism, and more terrorism. It makes perfect sense that funding would be shifting because throughout Bush's first and second terms, that was the operative mode. Politically, it sold much more effectively than the idea of fixing the broken justice system. And this was something that Simon and the impeccable team of writers on the show ran with and projected to the future with perfection.
Let's quickly then talk about Kima. We find out that she's living together with her girlfriend Cheryl, and it seems like Kima is going to law school on the side, but she looks bored as hell with the schoolwork. Can't blame her. Kima seems to be a cop at heart. Okay, so the episode ends with Bunk being called onto the scene for another dead body, another murder. This time, it's William Gant's. Remember that Gant was the witness who pointed out D'Angelo at the beginning of the episode, so it's clear that the Barksdales wanted to send a message. The man has been shot in the head 2 times, execution style, no witnesses around. And since McNulty has been put on that separate task force, Bunk will be responsible for handling this murder on his own.
It's such a well-written pilot. D is feeling it as he puts the pieces together. The simple themes of right versus wrong come to mind. We wrap the whole thing up by examining the consequences for the guy who actually tried to create some kind of justice. Was Gant's attempt in vain, or is this the thread that sparks the case to take down the Barksdale crew?
Alright, that does it for our Season 1, Episode 1 recap of The Wire. We're super excited to keep this thing going. Appreciate everyone for watching. Comment on what you thought about the episode, things that we got right, things that we got wrong, things that we should have included. Anything you want to do, we will catch y'all later.